So to be a human being is to have identities, to have communities, but you're never fully reducible to them. Now, Jean-Paul Sartre very famously talked about bad faith. And bad faith was, in a way, where a human being try to avoid this reality and try to identify fully with their identities, right? And he used the example of a waiter in Paris who he watched, who did everything so well as a waiter with a flourish, almost like they were performing an act. They weren't just being a waiter; they were so into the part that it almost felt like a parody. And Sartre, just reflected that sometimes a waiter thinks they're a waiter, right? But a waiter is never just a waiter. A stone is a stone and a dog is a dog, but a human being is a becoming. And we're constantly asking ourselves, what does it mean to be human? Right? A dog just is a dog, but a human can be inhuman. And we're constantly asking ourselves, what is it to be human? Now, we're not asking it consciously, but whenever your mum phones and you don't know whether to pick up the phone or not, right? You're in a sense deciding what is the right thing to do, what is the humane thing to do, what is the right thing to do, right? So we experience, and Sartre talks about this as an experience of our freedom, that and our responsibility that we cannot run from. That's why he says we're condemned to freedom, is we would like to have some group that tells us exactly who we are and exactly what we should do, because that would allay our anxiety, because anxiety is the evidence of our freedom for existentialists. Anxiety for an existentialist is the experience of not knowing what you should do, of having the freedom, of experiencing this radical freedom where you can't just go through life unthinkingly. You have to, in a sense, take responsibility for your decisions. Even if you think God is speaking to you, you have to take responsibility for whether that is the voice of God, or is it just your mind, or is it some sort of mental health issue or whatever. Like, you have to take responsibility for that. There's no way to escape your responsibility for the existentialist, and kind of us anxiety. And it's similar in psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis, I think, has a slightly deeper understanding of anxiety. That anxiety isn't so much the question of our own freedom, what should I do, but more a question, as Lacan says, of what does the other want of me? What should I do in light of the other? How do I fit into the world of the other? So it's similar, and anxiety arises from experience of our own freedom, but say more fundamentally an experience of not knowing how we fit in the world, of how the other wants us to act. So at a party, we might feel anxious when we leave, thinking we said something wrong, like the other, the big other, and the others in the party laughing at us because we acted inappropriately, right? How do I fit in with the other? And communities are designed to answer that question. They give you a set of criteria for how to fit in, for what to say and what not to say. Now, what I mentioned earlier is important at this point. Is the issue is it's never enough. So that's why communities have to have not just the explicit rules, but then they develop these implicit rules of when you can disobey the rules of the community, disobeying them in a way that is obedient to them, betraying them in a way that is faithful to them, right? So you get into all of these interesting binds. And one of the reasons why you get into these binds is because you can never be reduced to your identity. Communities are always a failure. They never fully work. And the more you try to fit into a community, the more anxious you can become. And the more you can feel, do I really fit in? And you find that in a community, everyone can feel like imposters. So imposter syndrome is another experience of this, of not being at one with your identity. I'm a teacher, but am I really a teacher? I don't feel I'm a teacher, right? So imposter syndrome. And communities are continually attempting to cover over, render invisible, or render contingent this experience so that we have a way of placing ourselves fully in the world. But we are never fully in the world. We are in the world, but we are not of it. Right? So